Well, it was quicker to get you through this expansion than the last one.
I think because this one, there's some life circumstances, and also we were honestly not expecting this to go through, considering the backlog that we were supposed to have going into this.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Big Cat Aethercast. I am Ray.
I am Leo.
And this episode is, well, technically it's all about the Stormblood MSQ.
But that's not what you want to talk about right now, is it?
Maybe, maybe not. What do I want to talk about?
You want to talk about everything that has been going on with your Let's Play.
Oh, right. So
by the time you'll be hearing this, we will have Rei'tan will have finished his adventures through
Dawn Trail.
Through Dawn Trail. So why don't you give the listeners your thoughts afterwards? I'm pretty sure you already gave your thoughts for the LP, but what are your thoughts after the dust has settled?
After the dust is settled, let's see. I guess the best way I can put it is it's not a perfect Let's Play for one. It's not a perfect expansion for one, but I was not expecting it to be better than Shadowbringers or Endwalker for one, because that was the culmination of a 10-year story.
It's also rather ironic because a lot of people have been making parallels between Dawn Trail and Stormblood.
Yes, mainly because a lot of people are conflating Wuk-Lamat with Lys, which you've been watching a bit of my Let's Play.
I can see where they say that. I think that the comparisons, even back then, are a little disingenuous.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I think a lot of the people who hate Stormblood just did not like the political drama in general.
And a lot of the people who don't like Dawn Trail are not liking the political drama they created for themselves.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this right now. Anyone who does not like Wuk-Lamat either A, does not like fun,
or B, is a
transphobic piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I will not hear arguments to the contrary, because A, you don't like fun, and B, you don't like trans people, so get the fuck out of my conversation. So there's that. But that's the elephant in the room, so to speak, for Dawn Trail.
I think what you can talk about are the raid series that's come out, because I think that was not in your LP.
Yes, it was actually.
Oh, okay, it was.
The Let's Play technically ended on episode 29.
Okay.
As of recording this episode, I believe episode 23 has just been posted.
Mm-hmm.
And so it ends on episode 29, but I had already recorded the Arcadian raids and have already scheduled those to be uploaded.
Okay, so the Arcadian raid system is in there. Okay.
Yes. They came out about 2 weeks after Dawn Trail.
Okay, so they were included in your recording batch.
Yes.
Okay. Any other thoughts in terms of the overall storyline, as well as your experience tanking, because you were Gunbreaker throughout the entire expansion, correct?
Yes, I was Gunbreaker throughout it, and I will say this, it was a lot harder than I was expecting it to be, tanking it, because this was my first time actually going through an expansion, learning how to tank in a new expansion.
Okay, but you are not yourself a tank player.
No,
okay.
My main is Dancer.
Right.
My main is Dancer, and it is Reaper. I play DPS.
Okay.
I'm the one sitting in the back, smacking as much damage as possible.
Got it.
But I did have a lot of fun. I did fuck up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
During the final boss, I believe, either a healer or a DPS get hit with a tank buster.
Oof.
Yeah, so that was bad. But I did have a lot of fun. I don't think I will tank again for the next Let's Play. Mm-hmm. This was just a challenge for myself.
Okay. Now, the next one, you're going to have to heal.
Oh, fuck no. With the way that healers before this were complaining about going on a healer strike because tanks could basically go through dungeons in Endwalker without a healer practically. Oh, the healers got their comeuppance. They were forced to eat crow in this expansion.
I see.
Because they had to heal. The final boss of the Arcadian raid does a soft enrage where she destroys most of the arena. It's only a single strip. She's at one end, and you have to stack as she does a giant blast.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. I know which one. I've seen it, yes.
Yeah,
I've seen that one through a music video, but that's another story altogether.
But she just keeps doing that,
yes.
and the healers have to keep on healing throughout the entirety of that.
Yes. Anything as far as the overall setting, because that was a big topic, because it's basically
it's our hometown, basically.
Yeah, the desert setting really hits close to home, especially even once you leave the Mayan influences of Tuliolal.
Yeah, I mean, most of the expansion takes place in the southern half, which is basically South America.
Mm-hmm.
It is Mexico to South America. When you go north, it is fucking Texas.
Yes, and then even further north, and you go into the future?
Technically, it wasn't even supposed to be there.
It wasn't supposed to be there, but it is.
Yeah,
we're gonna leave that story beat there, because I know that's technically spoilers.
It is technically spoilers.
So,
and you haven't actually heard the full lore of all this stuff, because it gets explained much better in Shadowbringers.
Does it? Because it already sounds asinine to me. But why don't we talk about what I've been up to with Stormblood, the actual reason we're here.
Yeah. I should also mention that I have started to do extremes.
Okay, why don't you talk about your process? So, just as a refresher, extremes are versions of trials, but harder.
Yes, they are harder. They have more mechanics, and they have what's called an enrage, where basically, if you do not beat the boss fast enough, the party will just wipe completely.
Okay.
And I've gotten a small raid static. It's only about like 6 people, and so the rest of them we have to get on through Party Finder. And we've been trying to work our way through Valley Garmonde EX. Mm-hmm. And it's it goes in fire phase, tower enrage, then either ice phase or lightning phase, another tower phase, enrage. And what we were trying to do first was just trying to get through the fire phase. And we've managed to do that pretty successfully. We haven't been able to meet up properly to do more of Valley Garmonde Extreme, mm-hmm. but I'm actually amazed that I've done as well as I have in an Extreme, because I thought I would never be able to do one properly.
Okay. And you're doing Dancer in that, I presume?
Yes, I am doing Dancer, and I am basically just boosting whoever's the highest DPS for that raid.
Okay.
But I think that's about the only thing I've done aside from Dawn Trail.
Go watch his Let's Play.
Please do. I put so much work into it.
But yeah, that's mostly what you've been up to. As far as me, I've been actually very static on this one. Part of the reason it took me quite a bit to get through Heaven's Ward is because I was leveling multiple classes at the same time. First going from Paladin to Dark Knight, then leveling up Machinist alongside Monk, and then even bringing in Astrologian to go ahead and make things even more complicated upon myself, and getting Red Mage ready for Stormblood, which was the other thing. So juggling many hats I was in the last expansion, whereas in this one, I basically did all the patch quests rotating through my other classes, so most of my classes are in the 63 range. Going into Stormblood, with the only ones that I was power leveling really were Monk and Red Mage, and by the end I was just doing exclusively Red Mage. But so Red Mage I got to level 70 as of the time of the recording. Monk is at 67. Dark Knight was at 63, so I got a little bit of Dark Knight story. Basically, your soul crystal shatters, and some guy calling himself Mist appears instead.
Yeah.
Who looks like a love child of Horshaphant
and Ysayle,
which is okay. That's trauma-inducing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I know what you are.
And then basically we have to go around absorbing ether by helping other people deal with phantoms of war, quite literally.
Yeah.
And dealing with their grief at the same time. Symbolism!
Yes. I mean, what can you tell about Mist?
I mean,
What do you think Mist is?
I mean, Mist is an embodiment of basically our regrets. If Frey was our repressed self,
Yeah?
then Mist is our representation of grief.
You are not far off, pretty much.
So, yeah, that's going to be fun. I've only done the first part of that job quest, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's basically that. The monk storyline leaves me with several more questions. So, naturally, the monk storyline actually has a lot to do with Alamigo, because that's where they came from.
Yeah.
And so your job companion Willamette is finally ready to go ahead and get started, rebuilding the Brotherhood. And so he goes ahead, comes down to the people, assesses the situation, and says, yeah, this is kind of fucked. We're going to need some help here. So he asks you to go back to Ul'dah and go partner up with the Brawlers, the Pugilist Guild. Pugilist Guild for a cross-discipline exhibition match. Which, okay, we can do that. And then we come back, and the two Mikote girls who were accompanying us from the last quest line basically get ambushed by some renegade Alarmigan bandits known as the Corpse Brigade, allegedly led by another Griffin who claims to be the lost son of Theodoric, the Mad King. I think he goes by Theodorid.
Yeah.
And then he claims that our monk buddy is his cousin Theodoric. There's like 3 different Theos in that family line, which is why it was confusing. But basically saying our monk, who has been anti-nobility the entire time, is actually nobility.
Yeah.
To which the stone-faced Eric, the mana physician, is like, This is the most stupid thing I have ever heard. Go tell him that he's wrong and that he needs to cheer himself up. And that's as long as I got into the quest line. I will say it's also a bit jarring because the quest lines are much shorter in comparison to Heaven's Ward and ARR.
Yeah, ARR, it was every
5 quests. And then it was 2 quests once you got 50 to 60.
Yes, and now it's every 3 quests.
Yes. So I haven't finished with that one yet. I wasn't able to progress it to the end prior to the recording. The only one that I actually did get to finish is Red Mage, which in Red Mage you're helping out your mentor hunt down his former partner, who basically dabbled in unethical magics, and we later find out the origins of such. What he actually was involved in is the commingling of mortal and void scent. And this leads to the creation of what are called nightkin.
Basically vampires.
Just they suck ether instead of blood.
Yeah.
And so Arya, who is the kidnapped orphan that you find at the start of the quest line, she turns out to be one such void scent. And basically is the reason why she is, despite having no formal training in red magery, is so powerful, because she basically has a connection to the void scent Lilith, who basically very much has a very similar form to Skahath from the Machi raids. And they do actually make you go back to the Machi Palace for the end of the quest line.
I will tell you right now that Skathak model is going to be used for a lot of boss fights.
I can imagine, much like how Cuchulainn was used.
Yeah.
I think at least once before in one of the boss fights in this quest line.
The Cuchulainn model was actually used in the final dungeon of Dawntrail, even.
Oh wow, it goes really far then. They got their money's worth out of that one.
Yeah. It's also used in Shadowbringers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, joy. But in the end, you managed to free Arya from her curse. She's going to have to start red magery from square one, but she's not too off-put by the setback.
Yeah.
And so in the end, it's actually fairly happy. I have not restarted any of my crafter quests, because that's going to be an investment in and of itself.
Yeah, you might want to hold off on doing your crafters.
I will most likely be guild grinding before I start doing crafting again.
Yeah.
That's probably what's going to end up happening. But for right now, I will say that is the extent of my job questing.
All right, so is there anything else you've done in Final Fantasy XIV?
I did a little bit of Frontline. And from what I'm able to understand of it, Frontline is capture the flag with Allegan...
with Allegan nodes.
With Allegan nodes. And all I can say is, I don't know how you people play this thing. This is confusing as balls.
Oh, trust me, I've played it myself. I suck at it.
I mean, I suck at it too, but it's also like, how the fuck is everyone... Like, I have never been so thoroughly mollywopped by like 8 players at once and wonder, what the hell hit me?
Yeah, that's basically Frontline. You run in and you run in and you die. That's basically Frontline.
I also don't understand like how like I understand the idea of okay, you need to go capture the flag and you need to go this, but the appearance of which Allegan nodes are active at any given time either comes from experience or comes from using a map which is larger than my fucking monitor.
Yeah.
And you've seen my new fucking monitors now.
Yeah.
So I don't understand, like, how you're supposed to know, A2 is activated, go to it. Like, where the fuck is A2?
Yeah. I will tell you this. The easier thing to play is Crystalline Conflict.
Which is deathmatch.
It's basically a crystal tower appears, and you control it, and you're trying to move it to the other side of the field.
Oh, okay. So it's
tower control.
No, I was gonna say payload, but however you know it, that's probably
it's payload.
Yeah, payload. That's probably easier than
and it's 8v8.
Okay, yeah, because like that was like 3 alliances, so whatever 18 times 3 is.
Yeah.
Which was a massive amount.
Yeah, Crystalline Conflict is a lot smaller, and the rewards are a lot nicer.
Okay, because I know I was going through some of my desired glamours, and I know one of them is going to require me to grind up a few, but not a lot, of PvP medals.
Wolf marks or the crystal totems?
Wolf marks.
Wolf marks. Okay, you get those from just doing front lines.
Okay.
And you can just do a daily front line and you'll get like 1,500.
That's what probably I'm going to end up doing, is just doing daily front lines, and hopefully that'll get me enough. I did manage to get, because I was doing raids, not raids, because I was doing dungeons and getting tomestones, I hadn't done I'd saved up quite a few, so I was able to get some item level 300 stuff pretty early on after I finished the MSQ. Okay. So I actually have a good chunk of accessories, but I'm not getting the armors yet because I know that's going to be built up over time.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried about that, but I am going to ask you off camera, because now I'm getting to the point of, okay, now I want to start doing glamour shit, and it's like, motherfucker, I'm still unclear about how some of the glamoring system works, because I will switch plates onto different armors, and then it will get mad at me. But so I don't know whether it's, do I need multiple, like, when I'm applying glamour plates, do I need to apply them separately? Do I just need to have a bunch of glamour and disglamour prisms on me?
You're going to need a lot of glamour prisms and glamour dispellers in your inventory.
Okay, so that's at least part of it.
Yeah, so you can just get them off the market board. Or I think there's somewhere else you can get them, but I usually just get them off the market board because I'm lazy.
Okay, because you can craft them yourself. All you need is a clear prism and then I think it's steel ingots.
I think so. I'm not.
I made some just recently. That's why I'm saying this.
Yes.
So that's mainly what I've been doing. So unfortunately, not that much interesting on that front. Probably by the time we start doing this, and I have, there is one thing I will say. Because I did get the Azima's earrings from the pre-order, I have been able to level up much faster.
Yeah.
So I will probably be able to get through most of my classes going into Shadowbringers, as I have been told you are saying Dark Knight.
Yes.
That is the Dark Knight expansion.
Yes.
Which is funny because I think at the end of 70 I just unlocked the ability to go after Reaper.
Yeah, at 70 you can do Reaper. Mm-hmm. I will say that I'm just saying that Dark Knight is technically the flagship class
Right.
for Shadowbringers, much like Paladin is for Endwalker.
I see.
And Monk and Samurai were for Stormblood.
Right, because they were featured in the trailers, and Dragoon was featured for Heavensward.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the Warrior was the for ARR.
For ARR, yes.
Yeah. But regardless, you can do whatever class you want.
Right. I still was going to go back to tanking anyway, just because I did enjoy Red Mage, but I did also feel at the times that it was just a different feeling, and I miss being a tank sometimes.
Okay.
So, if only for tank privilege.
I mean, fair enough. There is that bonus.
So I do believe we did end the last episode talking about the Griffin, the original Griffin, who was sloppy in disguise.
Yeah.
Who went ahead, rallied Alamigo to disguise themselves as Crystal Braves in the Alliance to attack the Garleans as a false flag operation.
Because we were already stationed there.
Anticipating shenanigans, and shenanigans we walked into. We beat Sloppy. He ends up sacrificing himself because he was going to channel himself to summon... Initially, he was trying to summon Rhalgr himself.
That was what everyone was believing they were going to be summoned.
Right.
But he ended up using the Eyes of Nidhogg.
To enhance himself, ends up becoming Shinryu instead.
Yeah.
And becomes a dragon, forcing Papalimo to sacrifice himself nobly to contain him, while the Omega weapon was used to weaken it.
Yes.
Omega weapon crashes in the middle of the desert after their huge battle. Shinryu is contained.
Shinryu is contained, and we don't know where Shinryu is.
At the time, correct. All we know is now is the time to move into Alamigo.
Right.
And so we start literally Mens Rea right after that.
Yep. We go in there, we meet up with the Resistance at Rhalgr's Reach, and we do a few the split side quests where we go to certain areas in Alamigo.
Mainly focused on two of the companions within Mefrid and Minago.
Yeah, Minago is more prevalent because Mefrid is quickly killed off.
Yes. As becomes sort of a regular thing, but Mefrid goes ahead and is the one to sort of introduce us to the living conditions in Alamigo, as well as introducing us to one of our new side villains, I guess to call her.
Fordola. Which a lot of people do not like Fordola. I'm ambivalent.
I think that Fordola does her job as being sort of the convert to the Garlean side. I can see why people don't like her. I also think that the main thing, and this is going to go, I think we should address it now, because this is the point at which most people start complaining about Stormblood in particular, and they usually complain about Fordola and Lys.
They complain about Fordola, Lys, and the fact that it's a tale of two expansions.
So we'll address the tale of two expansions more towards the end, but I think now is a good time to talk about Lys and Fordola. Yeah. I'm going to keep calling her Ida because force of habit, but it is Lys now. We got that chestnut out of the last episode.
Yeah.
But Lys and Fordola. Lys's alleged crimes include white girl savior syndrome.
Yeah.
Dumbass syndrome. And generally being the emotional hothead that charges into things still.
Charges into things and is not quite ready to lead Alamigo.
Which I think is, for that third one at the very least, that's the entire point of her arc.
Yeah.
I think they very much, are upset, because Ida and Papalimo, as a comedy duo, basically serve as comic relief compared to the rest of the Scions. Which is fair. I think that their dynamic was cute, but we did see that both of them can fight and contribute in their own way when the chips are down. I think what people are upset about is more so point number one, which is white girl savior syndrome.
Right.
Which they do address actually fairly well. While you're traveling around, you do come across a village who basically comes out and says, "Look, you were not here during the occupation. You have no fucking idea what it's like living under them." And that really puts Lise in dire straits because she she did not live through that. And sometimes that she questions herself whether that makes her less of an Alamegan.
Yeah.
And I think that is a fair level of self-critique. Now, are they upset that she's white-skinned and everyone else is dark-skinned? I think that's what they're more upset about.
I think that might be the case.
And to that end, it's like, I get that, sure.
But then again, Fordola is also Alamegan and she's white-skinned.
Also Menphilia, who is also Alamegan and white-skinned.
I mean, I don't think she's... I forget if she's Alamegan.
She must be... One, because, remember, her original outfit is very reminiscent to the Albeds, which are sort of similar to the Alamegans. And also remember that Thancred's hang-up is that he got her dad killed as they were fleeing
from the Gubu attack.
From the Gubu attack, which is at least part of his hang-up.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure Menphilia is also Alamegan.
In some degree.
If not full, then half.
Yeah.
And she was arguably as white, if not whiter, than Yida / Lise.
Because a lot of the heroes tend to come from Alamigo or the Uldal region.
Right. And also, and it's understandable because the other prominent Alamegan is Raubon. And Raubon definitely has his hang-ups as he's going into this.
Yes.
Which I'm glad they also bring that up later on in the storyline. But really, I think it's just the fact that Ys looks white girl and has been excluded from the trauma because she ran away at a much younger age than her older sister would have been.
Yeah.
I think I would have liked to see a little bit more of, because we just got the bombshell drop that Yida is actually Lise, that we never knew the real Yida. And I think having some of that play out would have been more interesting to where people start telling Lise about things Yida did and then give her that inferiority complex I think that would have been too much.
Yeah.
But I think expanding on that concept would have helped fill out a little bit of time and possibly not make it as much a tale of two nations.
Yeah. What I wouldn't have even needed to ask for much. I would have been happy if we were just given an echo flashback of Ida. Mm-hmm. Just one flashback of Ida so we knew the trauma and everything that Lise has gone through.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have helped, I'd say, make her a little bit more relatable.
I think a little bit rounder, and it would have given, because I think that's one of the things that isn't addressed. I think it's very much mentioned and then left alone. They could have expanded upon more of the fact, she's been living her sister's life for years. And she herself has never gotten to be herself. Even at the very end, she puts on a dress that is her sister's, and we never get the feeling of... there's options where you can basically say whether or not it compliments her. And I complimented her because I thought that it would look nice on her. But I am wondering now in hindsight what her response would... I mean, I guess she would have laughed and taken it positively if you had said... Yeah, this is a little out of character for you. But that goes again to the idea of Lise living as Yida for so long that she's lost herself to a degree.
Yeah.
I think there's more they could have expanded upon with that.
Yeah. Now, Fordola.
Okay, so if we know who the Garleans are supposed to be, so having someone like Yida be input into their ranks makes sense.
There's always going to be a traitor.
There's always going to be the traitor element. There's always going to be someone who's brought in who has the naturalist who can give them the home turf advantage. I think Fordola, for the most part, plays her part as a villain well. We have not gotten to the point where she started her redemption. We just know that she's probably going to get one because of the way FF14 generally works.
Yeah. She mainly shows up in the patch quests in Stormblood and in the later patch quests of Shadowbringers.
Okay. What I will say as far as her overall arc, it makes sense. I think that they showed off her cruelty very well. She has lingering bits of humanity, which get appropriately crushed for reasons.
Because...
I think what is again missing, and what, had they decided to not make it a Tale of Two expansions, probably would have gotten Fordola more than we got Name Day.
Yeah.
I feel like Name Day is more towards the Doman side of the expansion for various reasons. And I think giving Fordola more time to breathe would have given us more time. Because I think part of the reason why people don't like Fordola is because the conclusion of, we have to save her because she's Alamegan, is a little forced.
Yes.
And I will admit that's kind of a weakness, because for Lise, it very much seems I'm saving you not because I actually like you or because you're redeemable, but because you're blood pure and simple. And to that degree, it seems very token. And I can see where people say that, even though there are these hints of Fordola being a competent leader, despite what she actually does and what she's justified to do, because, again, that is an ongoing theme about the costs of war.
I will say, most people don't like Fordola. I've seen some people kind of go the other way and say that she's actually a very good character.
I wouldn't say she's fully good. I think she's a good trope. She's a good trope.
Okay.
Which is to say that she's not fleshed out in and of herself yet.
We will find that out when you get to the patch quest.
Right. And I will say that the only thing that makes her mildly more unique is sort of her interactions with Xenos, which we'll get into when we get to them. The one other thing I will go into, and this kind of goes for both Ida and Lise, boy, the female cast gets fucking shat on in this expansion. I have told you, at least on 3 separate occasions, in which, that's straight up harassment or SA implications right there.
Yeah, let's see. At the very start of the expansion, which we should probably get back to.
Right.
After we have done the split side quest, we try to do a little bit of an engagement and meet up with Name Day and kick his ass.
We kick Name Day's ass, which is fairly simple. However, Xenos himself decides to show up and completely murders everyone.
He knocks down Y'shtola, who is out for the rest of the expansion, pretty much.
Knocked out for the rest of the expansion, kills Mefred outright, injures everyone else who's named, and then we have an instance with him in which he wrecks our shit in, maybe after only getting a quarter of his health down.
The Crown Prince of the Garlean Empire is not to be messed with.
And as we will make as a running joke throughout the rest of this episode, a combat sexual.
Oh, yes.
So...
Oh, yeah, he's heard of the Warrior of Light, the hero of the Dragon Song War, and he's disappointed by how weak we are.
Well, we are 10 levels behind him, and at the very least, they have the decency to give us that in advance. So it's like, okay, we are supposed to lose here, but we will get strong enough to beat him. But the entirety of his dialogue with us, as well as the way he refers to us in other conversations, very much hints that he is getting off on this.
Oh, yes. He wants us to become stronger. He wants us to come after him.
He wants to get the battle. It is almost Baki-esque in the amount of testosterone he needs through combat in order to get off.
Yes. He wants the ultimate fight of his life. He wants to fucking feel something.
Yes. And he is willing to basically destroy 2 countries to get that out of you, between Alamigo and Doma.
Yeah, he literally does not care about the Garlean Empire. He does not care about his rank or status. He is apathetic to the world itself. He only wants the fucking fight.
Well, there is one thing he cares about, and that's fights being done right.
Yes.
Which is where he vents a lot of his incompetency towards his own soldiers. We see him, I think, at least twice strike down his own men because of their incompetence in dealing with us or dealing with the resistance. And in doing so, his grandstanding is less, I'm disappointed in you, and more of, you should have done better. Mm-hmm. It's less that it's less you let them win versus you should have actually put up a better fight to begin with. And where his interactions with Fordola is like, see, this is a real fighter. And, of course, the Garleans make jokes about Fordola being a whore in order for her to get by. We'll leave that there and we get thoroughly routed in Alamigo.
To the point where we're not going to be able to continue on this front at all. So the Scions figure, why don't we strike from the other side?
Right, and because at the end of the last expansion, Gosetsu had a ride to go fetch Minago to go...
Not Minago, Yugiri.
Yugiri to go try and find their master and help him out in their situation in Doma. And so the party, because Yugiri and Gosetsu have already left, the party is forced to resort to pirates in order to get their way to Doma.
Yes. Well, technically, not to Doma just yet. They're getting to Kugane.
Kugane, which is...
Japan.
The Japanese outpost to get to Doma.
Yes.
In doing so, we run afoul of...
our first...
sea spirits, and thus enter the first dungeon of the Siren Song Sea.
Yes. So, how was your first Stormblood dungeon?
It wasn't too bad. Honestly, the biggest issue that I've noticed going into any expansion, not just this one, but even Heaven's Ward and ARR, is that I tend to forget the first dungeons. I don't know why. They just do not land with me. I can generally remember the rest of them fairly well, even if I forget the exact dungeon. I usually remember the final boss. And so, in preparation, I went back and looked at the dungeon, like, why did I fight this headless water spirit? And, like, you fought them because you were seasick. Why did I have to stop in the middle of the ocean to fight them? Because ghosts and spirits were preventing you. It's like, oh, right.
Yeah, so we literally were being haunted by spirits that were preventing us from traveling.
So I do not know why I always have first dungeon syndrome when it comes for that, but I've noticed it as a trend. Because I've forgotten the one where you go rescue the hostages from the Pirate Bay.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, the first one, because that precedes the Maw of Tototorak.
Sastasha.
Or Sastasha.
Yeah, Sastasha is the dungeon you're talking about.
Yeah, which it precedes to Sastasha, I think.
No, Sastasha is the first dungeon where you deal with the pirates.
Okay, so then okay.
The Thousand Miles of Totorak is the spider dungeon.
Okay, see, I remember Thousand Miles of Totorak. I don't remember Sastasha.
Yeah.
I just remember... So, again, that just shows you how little I actually remember the first dungeon for some reason.
Hopefully Shadowbringers will fix this, because the first dungeon...
I have heard the first dungeon of Shadowbringers is fucking awestruck from a story perspective.
Oh, yeah. Awestruck from a story perspective, and a nightmare for tanks.
Well, so then it's perfect for me to go ahead and jump back in after I'm finished with my DPS adventures.
Yes.
But yes, we go ahead, we vanquish the sea spirits in the sea to go ahead and make our way safely to Kugane, and immediately regret it because we're met by henchmen of Lolorito.
Henchmen of Lolorito, a.k.a. Hancock.
Hancock, who looks like he's always got a hand on his cock because he looks smug as fuck.
Oh yeah, you want to punch that fucking smile.
Yes.
You want to grab those sunglasses off his face and punch him with those sunglasses in your fist.
Yes. So, you get the weeb's dream of walking through downtown Meiji-era Japan with full-on Shinsengumi intact. I think they're called the Sekisegumi.
Yes.
And they're basically the military police, which do not have Doma Kugane under lock, but definitely act as their eyes and ears in the area because they're not worried about civil unrest.
Yes.
That being said, you do eventually need to find a way to get... Your main goal once here is finding out where Yugiri and Gosetsu went, which involves meeting with the Namazu.
The Namazu, the little catfish people.
So, I remember you telling me about the Namazu, and you basically equating them as the beastful kin to the Lalafell.
Yes.
And at first I didn't believe you. I thought, this is just Rei'tan being Rei'tan because of a couple of bad apples. No, the Namazu as a whole are schemy as fuck.
Yeah.
And absolute shitheads when it comes to being total narcs as we get outed by the one we're trying to use to find our way to our friends and have to evade the Sekisegumi with smoke bombs. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was a very interesting... That encounter sneaking away from the Sekisegumi was very interesting. Yeah. And I thought that was very unique compared to other encounters of a similar kind.
I should also mention the Namazu get drunk off tea.
Wow, what fucking lightweights. They don't even get drunk off of alcohol. They get off of non-alcoholic beverages.
Yeah, I think it's because the tea's like leaf brewed water, and so it fucks with them or something.
I mean, that makes sense. Like, they're supposed to be catfish, which are but those are pond suckers. I just realized that the Namazu are scum suckers. Them being assholes is just on animal theme.
Yeah, and the whole Beast Tribe quest with them is to create a 7-year festival with them.
Oh, goody.
That requires 777 Namazu to perform it.
Of course.
Yes.
And I thought that they were being cute with the little red scars being associated with Inari. That's just camouflage, the cheeky fuckers.
I only did the Namazu Beast Tribe quest for the fucking cat bell for my Hrothgar.
Also, I remember at one point we come across the Namazu area where you would get the Beast Quest from.
Yeah.
And I basically said, you go ahead serve them alongside the Lalafell, you basically get fish and chips. So, I definitely have... I know you have the hatred for the Lalafell, but I personally have a hatred for the Namazu. Let me batter and deep fry these motherfuckers.
I do not blame you. I do not blame you. But anyway, as we're leaving, we also meet up with a Kojin, Soroban, who helps us out, and we do some favors for him, and he is going to be vital for the next step in the plan as we head out towards the Ruby Sea.
To the Ruby Sea. Also, I did not mention, I meant to mention this while we were talking, we do find Gosetsu. He actually did make it to Gugane and was actually held up by the Seki Segumi as they were going to detain him for being with Yugiri. However, he opts for trial by combat, beats 10 Seki Segumi in a row in single duels, to win his freedom, and they're like, yep, you're clearly too powerful to be and associated with any nefarious doings. On your way, good sir.
Yes. And to which Gosetsu, Soroban, and the rest of the crew head out to the Ruby Sea, in which we meet with the Confederacy. Not that one.
No, this Confederacy is... Well, actually, compared to the Confederacy you're thinking of, these are actually the good version of who actually want to rebel against the evil empire and actually have good rights. They are also bandits, and they have no problem admitting it, but at least they're honest bandits.
Yes. And in which we end up on a small little island that's off the coast of Doma, and which we meet the Viceroy of Doma. Yotsuyu.
So, I know one spoiler about Yotsuyu. I'm not going to say what that spoiler is. All I know is that we'll be able to talk about it in the next episode, I hope.
Yes, because the trial that involves what you're thinking of is in 4.3,
okay.
Which we are going to get to 4.3 because that is technically the end of Stormblood. But if this is supposed to be Brat Summer, Yotsuyu is our Brat Summer candidate for Final Fantasy XIV. Boy, does this bitch annoy me. This is I forget what her name is from fucking Avatar: The Last Airbender. Zuko's sister. This is Azula levels of hate right here. Azula levels of heat for Yotsuyu. Oh boy.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of people wanting her to step on them. And me, all I'm looking at this is, you need to go ahead and be put in timeout for everything that you've done.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, she's very convincing as far as the regional villain for this area. She's basically the counterpart to Fordola. Mm-hmm. And I think also, now that we're mentioning her, she also has a number of reasons she got shit on.
Yes, but we'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah, we'll talk about those aspects later.
For now, what she is doing is she's trying to interrogate the Domans and basically orders one person to kill a traitor.
Yes, which he ends up, not just a traitor, ends up forcing him to shoot his parents.
Yes, which then Gosetsu comes in
to go ahead and cause a distraction for us so that we can make contact with the Confederacy, willingly gets captured, and then we have to convince the Confederacy to go after Yotsuyu so we can save Kosetsu.
Yes, because it turns out that in the midst of that, Yotsuyu also captures some Confederate soldiers, and they're going to torture them as well.
Yes. We managed to go ahead, do several odd jobs for the Confederacy, while also having to make contact with the Kojin and some Zayla? Are they called the Zayla here? Or
yeah, they are the Zayla.
Okay, while making contact with some underwater Zayla, which we find out is where Yugiri came from originally.
Yeah, in which we also do an optional dungeon, which is the Shinsui of the Violet Tides.
So the second area that we go in, the second city, the one that is for the Zayla, which are the
underwater dragon.
The Ao Ra.
Yeah.
That's what the Ao Ra is the race. The Zayla are the regional name for them. But the city of Zayla is called Tamamizu.
Yeah.
And the Tamamizu...
No, that's for the Kojin.
Oh, which one is the one for the Zayla?
Suino Sato.
Suino Sato. So we go to Suino Sato. Suino Sato has a princess who is in danger. And we basically have to go save them in the castle. Is it the Velvet Castle? Or am I thinking of something else?
I don't remember what it's called. All I know is the dungeon is called the Shusui of the Violet Tide.
The Violet Tide, that's where it is.
Yeah.
So we have to go to the Violet Tide Castle in order to go ahead and rescue the Ruby Princess, who's been kidnapped and transformed into a monster. And as I agree with you, I said this. Apparently, this is optional.
Yes.
It shouldn't be, because it basically is. It should have been made like a mandatory before they will help you.
Yes.
But I guess they made it optional to reduce, I guess.
It's kind of like how the Dusk Vigil was optional.
Yes.
Even though that's technically the first dungeon of Heaven's Ward.
Right. So basically the same concept there. But you do that, and then you find out, no, the princess that you rescued is actually the body double. The woman who gave you the quest is the actual princess.
Yes.
But she cares about her retainer that much, and said retainer is unconscious, and therefore there's an optional side quest to complete after this optional dungeon to wake her up and to get some extra goodies.
Yes, which also ends up leading into a custom delivery quest where you deliver stuff to the actual princess.
Yes. Also, we neglected to mention that what is mandatory for that string of adventures is doing quests for the Kojin, because they give you the ability to breathe underwater, which is mandatory because you will be diving in certain areas of this expansion.
Yeah, because they introduced diving in this expansion, which they did not really cash in on in later expansions, except for a few notable instances. But that's about it. But I will say that basically, when you help the Kojin, you are also looking for one of their sacred relics to kind of stop the Red Kojin from supporting the Garleans.
The Garleans. Well, what we end up doing is we try to convince the Red... We had to find a way to get the Red Kojin to no longer support the Empire. And the Blue Kojin, who are really green, explained that all Kojin are deeply religious.
Yes.
And that they have a shared treasure hoard in one area of the Ruby Sea, where if anything happened to it, if it was under siege, all Kojin would immediately stop whatever they were doing to go deal with the siege.
So they were going to create a distraction there to allow the Confederacy to move in.
In doing so, we retrieve a medallion, which is...
A mirror.
A mirror, which is one of the 3 sacred treasures of the Kojin, which ends up being brought with the other 2, which are already in the vault, to end up summoning Susanoo.
Yes.
Who is the patron deity or the patron icon of the Kojin, thus resulting in our first trial.
The Pool of Tribute.
Which, I gotta say, is quite an awesome fight.
Oh yeah, that fight is where... It's where you start realizing that Stormblood really upped their game for dungeons.
Yes.
Or trials, at the very least.
Yes.
Because at first, it's a normal... You hear the drums, you hear the sounds of revelry as you fight Susanoo. And then, all of a sudden, he brings down a giant sword, turns into a giant water version of himself, and begins to slam it down onto the party, where the tanks need to move into a specific spot and basically do a button mashing minigame while everyone else is doing damage to the sword so they can knock it back. And they have to do that twice before he finally slams it down properly.
Which is a really great mechanic for that trial. You end up beating Susanoo, which deeply disturbs the Red Kojin and basically puts them in a rout. The Empire does find out, and Xenos and I think they either take Murasame, or they take Amano no Kiri.
Yes, they find Amano Habakiri and use it as a way to
placate Xenos for the fuck up that happened.
Because Xenos, when he conquered Doma, gained a fascination for katanas.
Which he has 2 of them on his person, the Swell and the Storm, and now Amano Habakiri now is his 3rd sword in the collection.
Yes, and he has them all in this weird rotating sword sheath of his.
In this massive, which I call the butt plug, massive like gun sheath, almost in the style of the massive gun hammers that the Garlean elites use.
Yeah, I believe what his giant sheath does is that it charges those blades with ether.
Yes, in order for him to be able to use it for his massive attacks.
Yes.
Also, Grinwald, after what happened in Alamigo, is demoted and is now made Yotsuyu's personal guard.
Or, as we should say, personal bitch.
Right. And Name Day does not get any... Name Day's troubles only get worse going into the expansion.
Oh, yeah. He never has a good day.
Yes.
It's like all his name days never came.
Oh, that's sad. But with the Ruby Sea situation dealt with, we are actually able to head into Doma proper, into the province of Yangsha.
Yeah. Welcome to Fantasy China.
Which, boy... Like, I thought that, like, there was some bullshit with getting into Kugane with a couple of rough accents on some people, and just the overall setting. Boy, they hammered it hard in rural China here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just like the music and just the setting, like literally tigers all over the fucking place. Like it is deep into yellow China, which I'm not making a race thing, but that's literally what the land. It's literally Yangsha is literally yellow country.
Yes.
So they are it's literally the name of the place.
Yeah.
Anyway. We eventually find where
Yugiri
is. She has reconnoitered with her people in the House of the Fierce,
which is in Namai.
Which is next to another village. Which I will say this because we never brought it up. All of the town, or most, if not all, of the towns in Doma and Alamigo are incredibly depressing.
Yes.
I mean, I get that they are all under the boot of the Garleans firmly, but my God, it is so depressing because the constant theme there is people don't trust us because we're outsiders spreading the word of revolution. We do tasks to go ahead and try to get the people to like us. The people still don't like us, but 1 or 2 people begrudgingly trust us because we help them out in a personally meaningful way. Big shit happens. People rally around us, and although the boot gets put to heel in Alamigo, it does eventually start to lift in Doma.
Yes, and that's basically the whole plot of what happens in Doma for the most part, because we help a kid and his little sister. Mm-hmm. We end up raising the morale of people, start to get them to want to fight back.
We find out that Xenos is making a visit to Doma for the purposes of dealing with Yotsuyu's bullshit.
Yes. To which Yugiri suggests we assassinate him.
To which everyone else thinks it's a stupid idea, don't do it. But we decide to at least go look after Yugiri to make sure she doesn't end up dying, which leads to our second fight with Xenos.
We still get our ass kicked, however...
But we bring him down to half health.
Yes. And also, when he tries to strike us down again, the horn on his Garlean armor breaks off, and he's like, "Oh, so you have some skill after all." Mm-hmm. And so he's getting that boner again.
Right. His battle boner is starting to rise without the need for Cialis, so he is at least content to let us continue to grow.
Yes. And Yotsuyu is, like, frustrated at this whole thing.
Well, she's more frustrated that he got away than anything else, but eventually we do end up having to intervene to save a bunch of people who are dragged off to basically an internment camp and have to do some stealth assassinations in order to sneak our way inside. We also get introduced to the sniping adventure play during some of these encounters where we're given a blow dart to knock out targets at range.
Yeah, this is going to be a reoccurring thing, and I think in the first expansion of Stormblood, you're going to have to find a part on a monster that is going to be annoying to spot.
Okay.
Word of advice, I think it's in the front.
Okay. I know that there was one side quest I did later on where it involved me shooting a moving target. That wasn't too bad.
Yeah, people don't really like the scope minigame pretty much. Mm-hmm. I believe you did that again. You did that before during the Final Fantasy 16 crossover to find Clive.
Yes.
Yeah, that it was introduced in Stormblood.
Yes. So we managed to go ahead and deal with the Doma threat, and we find out that Lord Hien lives, who is the master of Yugiri and Gosetsu. He has been resting his wounds in the Azim Steppe, aka Mongolia.
Yeah.
And basically he said, I'm either going to decide whether I'm going to turn myself over to surrender for death, or whether I'm going to come back to liberate my people.
Yep.
And so with that dire ultimatum given, the party heads for the Azim Steppe, where we're introduced to the other Zayla of the region.
Yeah.
Who basically live in various tribes and basically meet up to decide who will be Khatan.
Yeah, the Kahan.
The Kahan, who is the great leader of the entirety of the tribes. We meet with three primary tribes. The Mole, who are basically the
peace lovers.
Peace lovers who follow around the old ways and are notable because they are the ones who nursed Lord Hien back to health and whom he is staying with as a guest when we find him.
Right.
We also know of the Sunseekers.
Yeah.
Who are
led by Magni.
Magni, who is of meme fame because of a certain scene that's going to come on near the end of this expansion.
Yes.
But we're not there yet. But he is, for all intents and purposes, Andrew Tate if he were a dragon man.
Pretty much.
He is a proud chauvinist male who believes that his woman is destined to be out there, but he hasn't found her yet.
Yeah.
And has his, I want to say, masochist, homoerotic underling as his right hand.
Yeah. As well as his actual brother.
Oh, it is his actual brother.
Well, there's two people.
Right, there's two brothers, but I'm because they make the term they actually address it like everyone calls you brother. Is that a hereditary thing or like no? I am a big that is in part my title, but the one who is actually the homoerotic masochist is his actual brother.
Right,
like actual blood brother. But that will come later. The other one are the Tharl. Who are probably the most left berserk thing I have ever seen in a while. They basically are a bunch of
warmongers,
battle barbarians who not only believe in death leads to glorious reincarnation, which means when they're not fighting, they're fucking, and then also believe that the spirit's gender is separate from the body's gender, which is why the leader Sadhu has a very masculine aura about them, even though they are very female.
Because apparently the last three incarnations of Sadhu were all male.
Well, Sadhu has always been a male, therefore even if Sadhu appears in a female body,
it is Sadhu.
It is Sadhu because that was the first body, or that was the first baby born after Sadhu's death.
Yes. And Sadhu is, oh boy.
Sadhu is absolutely like murder yandere crazy, levels of crazy.
Oh yeah. She thrills for the glory of combat.
So basically we have to deal with a
There's a lot of battle sexuals in this expansion.
Yeah, well, it is Stormblood, so it kind of is fitting.
Yeah.
But basically, we have to go ahead and we basically find out about the Sunseekers tribe and the Dotharl tribe while certain members of the party are held hostage. Notoriously, Lys and Hien are left behind with Magnai, while Gosetsu and the Warrior of Light are sent out to go scouting to go spotting the Dotharl for Magnai.
Because the battle for the Khan is coming up, and Hien wants the Mole to win so he can unite
the tribes under his banner. But Magnai is looking to go ahead and stop that, and basically presses the party into service in order to try and dissuade them from that. This is where one of the other Stormblood hates women moments comes in which in the decision to keep 2 people in jail and 2 people to go scout the Dotharl, he basically looks at Lys, who is the only female with us, and says, "You're not the woman, but we can make use of you."
Yeah.
And as skeezy as that sounds, he eventually just makes her just milk cows. Or milk sheep.
Yeah.
Which Lys finds degrading, but not the worst thing that comes to mind.
Because the homoerotic masochist has a thing for Hien.
Although, I think this happens regardless of what gender you are. The Warrior of Light can offer themselves as tribute.
Yes.
And in which case, no, I think I'm going to go with the pretty boy.
Yeah.
Which is rather humorous, considering again 2 Hrothgars here on the couch.
Yes.
And I think also just the various vibes, because their tribe is also very much strength is power oriented, because there's a side quest where there's a culinarian who's dejected because no one gives him any respect because he's the weakest fighter, but also no army marches on an empty stomach.
Yes, which I believe you can continue that quest line and it'll resolve itself eventually. I never got a chance to finish it because usually with blue quests, I don't do the quest lines that continue after it because they're not...
Because they usually don't give you much besides
lore.
Lore or occasionally... Because a couple of the accessories that you would get are locked behind those quests lines. Right. There's one later on where you go back to a part of the Alamigo where the M tribe is from.
Yeah.
And there's a kid who's basically I'm going to be the next nun. And it comes off as the dude is weak as fuck. Why is this guy challenging me? Go teach him how to be a fighter.
Oh, yeah. I think he's part of the Ananta tribe quest.
He leads into the Ananta tribe quest, but his personal gimmick is that, his dad actually was nun when their tribe was so big we needed to have 2. And his father stepped down voluntarily to prevent any infighting. And then when they found out that the evil Ananta tribe was trying to cause shit with a experimental Garlean substance that they were using to intentionally make animals go crazy, he stopped them single-handedly at the cost of his life. And he left his son with the Ananta to raise him, and that's why he gave up his life. And so the present nun's yeah, we kind of did you dirty. And the kid's no, I was being a spoiled little shit. Let me ingratiate myself with the tribe proper, and then I will earn the right to challenge you for nun.
Right.
Which is honestly very wholesome and again, very nuanced for this storyline, I feel.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those storylines where it's man, we do not talk about these enough because of how well of a side quest it's crafted.
Anyway, in order to... We were talking about...
In order to qualify, to even help in the battle for the Great Khan, we have to actually be considered nomads first.
Yes.
In order to do that,
we had to do Bardam's Medal.
Bardam's Medal, in which we go through this trial to gain
a Yol.
A Yol, which is a massive condor, which I swear looks like the Great Condors from Dragon Quest.
So, this dungeon is a bit of a weird one.
No shit! So basically, I understand this is supposed to be sort of a knowledge checkpoint.
It kind of is. Basically, it's supposed to teach you mechanics that are going to be implemented later on and in future expansions.
Well, they have been used before. This is not anything new.
Yeah.
What's new is that they're basically like, okay, motherfucker, you've been able to DPS check your way through, or you've been able to tank check your way through most things. Do the mechanics right, or you die.
Yes.
Is basically how because it's not a combat encounter. No, you have to survive. You basically have to have your party survive the mechanics. If you fail the mechanics, you don't get to pass that boss encounter.
Yeah, basically, as long as one person survives that mechanics round, because it's 3 rounds basically, right. And it's only for the second boss fight. I will say this.
Yes.
You have to not look at the enemy when it's doing the eye mechanic.
Right.
You have to move when the power what's the word? When the earthquake moves happen.
Okay.
You have to move in time for the earthquake moves. You have to move when you see the little arrow that's following you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to keep moving because more things are going to drop on you.
Right.
And then you have to you got to relearn the behemoth mechanic.
Which is hide behind the rock before it explodes.
Yes.
So I notoriously died on basically all of those mechanics, as I told you during them. I have no problem doing the mechanics. I have a problem doing the mechanics and just dodging. I can focus mid-combat and do all the things, because afterwards, when it came to fight the Great Yol as the end boss, I was dodging mechanics no problem, and I'm DPS. I have a problem dodging the mechanics by themselves, and I'm not doing anything else.
Yeah.
And that's where it tripped me up a lot more.
Yeah, it has tripped me up on occasion, and I've fucked up. I fucked up even now on Bardom's Metal.
So I think for Bardom's Metal to be that mechanic is way too late.
Yeah.
They need to have put that back in ARR.
Yeah, they need to have put that in ARR or done like the Sprout house thing.
The Sprout training. Like that should be Sprout training for sure.
Yeah, it should be the next level from what they've taught you.
Right. And so I think that's I get it, because they're like, shit, we're not actually like, people are messing up because they're every time they approach it, they think it's a new mechanic when it's just the same shit we're using over. Let's just make that absolutely clear in this dungeon. I don't know why they chose this dungeon. I think it was I think that they could have again put it as part of Sprout training. I think it was just poorly implemented, and I do not like it.
Well, word of advice, it's going to start procking a lot more.
Well, no, it's fine everywhere else, because I don't have... Again, as you saw through the later raids, even when shit got crazy, I have no problem when it comes to with battle mechanic encounters. I can pick up on that quickly. For me, the issue is doing only dodge mechanics without having that extra stimuli of also doing your combos.
Yeah, and even then, this punishes you a lot harder than a normal raid where you would just get like a Voln stack or a damage down.
Exactly.
It's basically you get hit twice, you're chained in place until the round ends.
Right.
And if everyone gets chained, you get wiped and you have to redo the whole thing.
Right, and that's to me, that's the thing, is that usually the punishment, the curb is... Because it's not even, like, it will lock you out real quick. So it does, like, in, like, say, something like Orem Vale, where it's punishing, like, you're usually quick enough to, like, oh, okay, don't stand in the fucking glowing pit of liquid while you're getting the stacks put on you, because you're going to die way faster. And it's like, oh, take the fruit. Take the fruit once you're at a certain stack point, because there's no way your healer will keep up.
Yes.
And so... I think one of the two needs to change. Either if they're going to make it that strict, put it way back earlier on so that way it has time to grow, or you need to go ahead and be a little bit more generous, because that is way too quick in my opinion.
Yeah, well, they haven't changed it yet, so I doubt they will.
Either way, you eventually you qualify, you get your Yol mount, and you become able to qualify for the battle for Kahan. And you go ahead and do so in this massive
free-for-all.
Which is actually really well done.
Yeah.
And then you go ahead and have this map. So basically the way that it works is there's an area on the entire Azif Steppe that gets channeled with...
magic.
That gets channeled with ether. You have to go ahead and play Capture the Flag. The only problem is that everyone else is also rushing for it at the same time. So the first leg of the journey, rush to the spot. Second leg of the journey, fight off Magnite and Sadu at the same time. And they will conflict with each other, but mainly you're still going to have to be the ones to knock out one and then the other, and then claim the title of Kahan for yourself.
Yes, and I should also note that you need to take out Sadu quickly because she is casting fucking Meteor.
Yep, and she will one-shot you if you allow her to get it off. Afterwards, good old Name Day shows up again and goes ahead and
tries to threaten us
with a massive armored tank in which all the barbarians basically say, yeah, fuck this noise, and we start fighting Garleans.
Yep.
Also, just for the record, Grinwald is his name. If you try looking up Name Day 14, it's gonna take you a bit. So it's Grinwald is the dude's name. He's just called Name Day because his favorite expression is like it's all my name days came at once.
Yes, and well, he gets thoroughly beaten, and we are the new Khan. The Warrior of Light is the Khan of the Azim Steppe now.
Yes.
And we will hand off our leadership to Hien
for the purposes of retaking Doma.
Yes.
And so there is a little bit of an interlude going back. There is a moment where Gosetsu and you have a moment because there was a soldier who got killed on the way to approaching the Tharl. You save one soldier, but the other one is killed. The Tharl basically are like, fuck the corpse, it doesn't matter. To which Gosetsu doesn't really gel with that, and it's like, let's give him at least some burial rites. And you have a moment of basically talking with Gosetsu about death and mortality. That's a death flag written.
I believe that's at least 2.
Well, we have another one, but that's with another character, and he's not dead yet.
Yes.
Anyway, we end up going back to Doma, getting final preparations ready for the invasion of Doma Castle. Going out with Hien to scout the area gives him the inspiration to say, you know what? We're just going to flood the castle and rout those fuckers once and for all.
Yeah, we're saying castle is not the symbol of Doma, its people are.
So they go ahead and they make the decision to have the Confederacy act as a diversionary raid,
while the Kojin go underneath and blow up the wall to Doma Castle and flood it with the strength of the one river.
Meanwhile, Alphino goes ahead and hacks into the moon barriers, the moon gates, to go ahead and down the barrier, preventing outside access, and thereby allowing us to get inside and begin the Doma Castle raid proper.
Which has a very funky beat to it.
Yes, it does, but it's a very, very fun dungeon all nonetheless.
Yeah.
And ends with us fighting a hyper-tuned Grinwald who's been the subject of
Garlean experimentation.
Garlean experimentation as a result of the last encounter.
Yes. So, Doma Castle, what did you think about the entire trip of itself?
I think it was a great dungeon all wise. It wasn't that long. It seems like by this point they've gotten the rhythm down for dungeons, and it's just a matter of what extra things they're throwing in the way. Like going through the barricades where you had gunfire shooting on you was fun.
Yeah.
And I've done it once or twice since then to where it's like, yeah, I can vibe with this.
Yeah.
Hypertuned Grinwald himself is actually really fun because you also have missiles, chainsaws, Gatling guns. Like he's got all the Garlean toys to mess with, and you still down him.
Yes. He's just like, come out to play. Oh, he's completely broken now.
Oh, I do think that this occurred at this point, and we forgot to mention it before Doma Castle. You ambush a couple of Doman soldiers who are working for the Empire, and you encounter one who remembers counting a young Yotsuyu.
Yeah.
Who basically, not only was she abused by her family and as an unwanted daughter,
sold into sex.
No, she was first off, she was sold as a bride to a Garlean officer who wanted a plaything, which is dark. Then, when said husband died, she was put into the geisha / Oiran trade, again, double dark, and then she managed to basically claw her way out into a position
as a Garlean spy.
Which probably involved more sacrificing of her body, again dark, and then eventually clawed her way up to being viceroy of Doma, which leads to her utter hatred of her own people.
Yep. In which once we finish Doma Castle, Hien has the blade to her neck pretty much as she recounts her entire life story.
Only for her to say, you know what? Una reverse card, I'm going to bring the castle down on you, bitches.
Which she then tries to fire the gun at Hien, who cuts the fucking bullet and then her down.
But does not have anything to counter explosive ordnance, as the ceiling of the very castle itself falls on top of everyone, save for Gosetsu holding it up with the sheer audacity of a samurai.
Yep, that's a strong-ass Rogadin right there.
Only to get then shot by Yotsuyu.
In the back several times.
Still holding up said ceiling, and then telling everyone to get the fuck out.
Which we do, sadly.
As the castle continues to crumble down. And as soon as anyone says, we need to go back for Gotsuyu, it blows up.
It blows up, the whole castle comes crumbling down, and basically...
He's presumed dead. I say presumed dead because Soroban goes to go search for him underwater as a good
turtle man does.
As a good Kojin does, and is unable to find a body.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, no one says anything about Yotsuyu at this time either. It's just presumed she's also dead too, but no one ever actually says it.
Yeah.
Anyway, foreshadowing aside, we mourn Gosetsu's loss, we celebrate the liberation of Doma, and now with new forces, we head back to Alamigo to continue the original plotline.
Yes. We try to leave as quickly as possible, but we get halted by Hien as we're about to ride the boat, and he says thank you, and we will offer whatever help we can once we've started to settle things down here in Doma.
Not just to the Alamegans, but also to the Alliance.
Yes.
Which, again, another member into the fold. We go back to Alamigo. There is a drawbridge with a outpost on it that was mentioned early on, but basically was considered no can go. Mm-hmm. Until recently, when it was determined that basically the Alamegans are jumpy and are looking for any excuse to go after the resistance, to which the idea is to have a baited skirmish bring them out of opposition, leaving the bridge outpost lightly guarded, and therefore allowing our team to go ahead and rush in. The original purpose wasn't to be for Dola and her Black Skulls, who were going to be guarding there as the reserve unit, but to simply put a glamored flag over the stronghold to make it seem like it fallen, and therefore rout the entire team with the wool over their eyes.
Which seems to work pretty well, because we fight for Dola, we kick her ass, she is forced to retreat when the flag gets put up, because all the other Garleans fucking freak out.
Right, because again, they are not used to losing.
Yes.
Fordola gets brought in front of Xenos, where again, lots of derogatory comments are made about how she managed to get so high up.
Yeah.
And Xenos says, look, I know you retreated because of your men. I'm going to give you a chance. But you're going to have to do something for me.
And in comes a captured Kryl.
In captures a captured Kryl and a doctor to initiate the experiment.
Yes, the experiment, which will be
explained in a little bit, but we have to get there. But unfortunately, during the raid, Kryl was assisting in the transfer of some injured soldiers, and she was captured as part of the skirmish. So Kryl is in enemy hands. Fordola is getting something done to her, and we're still just pressing on deeper into the Heartland. We end up getting into the Fringes area.
The Fringes area, and we passed the Peering Stones, which is the M Tribe place.
Right.
And, while the Garleans were retreating, they tried to take an Ananta hostage.
They had an Ananta hostage from the evil Ananta tribe with them.
Yeah.
Said Ananta tribe basically was wanting to basically be left out of it. And instead, because of Fordola's paranoia
and racism by not caring which Ananta it was,
they basically forced the capture of the princess, for lack of a better word, of the Ananta tribe. Which, during their retreat, they get harassed by said Ananta tribe saying, hey, give us back our princess, to which one of the Garlean which one of the Black Hounds murders them.
Which causes the Brood Queen of the Ananta to cry out and wail in suffering and summon the primal of the Ananta.
Which is Sri Lakshmi.
Sri Lakshmi. Stop interrupting me, you fuck.
Sorry. But yes, Sri Lakshmi is summoned as a result.
And we have our level 67 trial of emanation.
Yes. So Lakshmi has a very similar gimmick to the FF16 raid as I've encountered it.
Yes.
I understand it occurred here first.
Yes, where you have to press the trigger button to activate Vril, which basically gives you a protective barrier from either her knockback attack or her big, giant goddess bosom attack.
Yes, which I've managed to successfully dodge.
Yes.
So, it's not a difficult raid, although I can see why someone who if they were encountering this for the first time, would find it a bit odd, because it doesn't block all attacks, it only blocks those specific ones.
Music's pretty good.
Yes, it is. I will say that generally there is more words thrown about survivor's guilt and loss of loved ones between Lys and the Ananta broodmother. Although my criticism for this one actually goes to Ysayle, because Ysayle sees what's happening with the Ananta and has flashes back to what happened.
You mean Fordola?
No. Ysayle.
Ysayle's dead.
I'm sorry, not Ysayle. Alysae. Alysae has flashbacks to what happened with the kobolds.
Yeah.
And remembers, oh shit, this is basically what happened with little Gabu. I'm not going to let this happen again. Tries to forcefully tell the Anantas to give up on their fake god, which goes over as well as you would expect for a grieving mother.
For a grieving mother who's also very likely been tempered.
Right. And so, that basic, and even like...
And this is going to come up again in the patch quest, I'm going to tell you right now.
And even Alphino's kind of like, sis, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So,
we can't fix tempering.
And especially... Well, even without tempering, even if you were assuming she was just a grieving mother, like, literally coming out and saying the god that you worship is a fake... usually is not good for engendering pleasant social relations.
Yeah, I will say Alysae is known to more often than not put her foot in her mouth. Alphino likes to...
Alphino is definitely more the diplomat.
Yes, he is more the diplomat. Even Alysae has admitted this.
Yes. So I will say that is... If everyone's giving Lys shit because you know not the conflicts of war... then I feel like the same needs to be given to Alysae in terms of, you know what the conquest of war was, stop telling people that outright that it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my other critique about that, because I think that there are some faults on other players or on other characters, and I don't think they give as much of a fair shake.
Yeah. But anyway, we make it to the southern peaks and the base of Alagiri, which is right at the base of the castrum, right before Alamigo,
which is seemingly abandoned by the Garleans suspiciously. But at this point, the Alliance can't afford to look a gift horse in the mouth and just prepares to sack the next castrum, which goes fairly well as you expect until we find out two things. Number one, we find out what the fuck happened to Fordola.
She's been experimented on and given a false echo.
For lack of a better word, she's been given a fake echo, although she's only given a half one because she only has one glowing eye.
Yeah.
And we later find who got two glowing red eyes, but starting with the one because that's the experiment.
Basically, they're called the Resonant.
The Resonant because they artificially use living Aether subjects, which is why they presume they needed Kryl, in order to be able to duplicate it into someone who is Aether deficient.
Yes. It was basically an attempt to give the Garleans the ability
to use magic.
Yes. Which is terrifying, considering they're basically superhuman as is.
Now what if we gave them magic?
Yeah.
But we managed... You raid the castrum as part of a...
Well, actually, before that, we should also mention that... I forget it was before, or I think it was before we went to Castrum Abania, that Conrad ended up killed in a skirmish.
No, Conrad dies here.
Oh yeah, Conrad dies.
So what happens is, everyone's raiding the Castrum, which is this massive tower. Fordola is in another another area where they have a massive fucking cannon, and Fordola is given the second chance that Xenos was promised her. You need to shoot at that tower where all your men are at. And she has to go ahead and make the Sophie's choice. Do I disobey Xenos and get murdered? Or do I kill my men and survive?
And she chooses to kill her men and survive.
Which a lot of people, including Alphino and Conrad, are in the tower at the time that the shot goes off and potentially injures a lot of people.
Yes.
This is where Conrad dies, because he dies telling Lee she needs to be the new successor for the Resistance. He discloses this to us in private before that raid. Yeah. Which is his death flag.
Yes.
But he doesn't actually die until that cannon strike. And that's when shit goes south.
Yes. And we should also mention that the cannon does not get used again because a certain dragoon with a bloodied lance comes in and destroys it.
Now, we do siege that tower initially right after the initial cannon shelling, and we do encounter Fordola, and we do see firsthand her enhanced resonance abilities.
Which is basically the ability to see a little bit ahead into the future to dodge attacks, which is basically what the Warrior of Light's ability is mechanically in Final Fantasy XIV. Because the Echo allows us to see, oh, this area is glowing. It's about to be hit.
Right. And who knew that we were actually going to get lore about how our powers worked 2 expansions later?
Yeah.
Like, that fucking amazes me that it took them this long to say, hey, are we going to justify how the fuck they see the markers? The Echo lets them do it. Okay, when are we going to tell them this? How about 2 expansions later when we have the enemy have the same power?
Alright, that works.
Good freaking lord.
But anyway, we finally get into Castrum Abania, the dungeon proper.
So, Castrum Abania is Castrum Abania is the battle proper for this.
Yeah, it's the level 69 dungeon.
And so, raiding Castle Abania is a mess. It is quite a fight in and of itself.
Yeah, you're basically going through all sorts of war mechs. You have to take down pods that have hypertuned within them before they hatch, basically, which most of them still do regardless. And I should mention that the second boss, which you had trouble on twice,
yes,
has been reworked.
Twice?
No, it's only been reworked.
Okay.
Once. But basically what would happen is it would create pillars, and you would be wrapped up in an elemental affinity, and you would have to go to those pillars.
Right.
But they've changed it.
Okay. Yeah, I remember it now, and I know which one we were having difficulty with. I think it was mostly just because that time it was duty findered. I was playing with a bard who was somewhat familiar with the mechanics, but I think
they were still
first time it was the bard's fault, second time it was the healer's fault first time was the bard's fault, second time was my fault, and then the third time the healer almost dropped us, but then we managed to make it through.
Yes.
So it was a bit of a slog, but eventually it was covered. I think it had to do with party, then it had to do with the actual fight. And then the final boss is an experiment of basically a hyper-tuned Garlean who's become a massive Doom Demon.
Yeah, it's a Doom Demon. It's throbbing with muscles and claws, and you can tell it was a Garlean because of the third eye on its forehead.
Right, and so this is very much a horror theme type thing. This is basically where Ed Doctor was putting the experiments up.
Yes, and he was like, "Come here, darling, it's time for your medicine," which boosts it up to do more damage. And
right.
So, what do you think of that dungeon?
Oh, it was quite fun, minus the shenanigans with the elemental experiment. Gave me actually a little bit House of the Dead vibes just because of the way that some of the enemies look. But all in all, I'd say it was a fairly good dungeon despite my difficulties with it. It's at this point that Lise does become the leader of the resistance.
And dons her new garb.
And dons her garb base, which is actually a folk dress that her sister was more comfortable wearing. We already went over sort of the spiel with that, but this is where Lise starts to sort of take in on her own And before the final battle, she asks you for a duel on top of Relgar's palm.
Yes.
Which is basically the introduction of the Stormblood movie.
Trailer.
The Stormblood trailer. Which yields you the achievement Cheek to Cheek. Which is rather cheeky of them.
Yes. But with that, we end up into the final area of Stormblood, the Locks, and the capital of Alamigo.
Which is basically a simple encounter. You head to a Salt Lake area in front of the castle itself. You can't approach it directly head-on because everyone's expecting it. However, you can sneak into the area through a forgotten channel, which requires you to dive.
Yes.
You sneak into the castle, unlock it from the inside, and you're able to go ahead and mount an offensive. You end up finding out that Xenos has sent a Lupin contingent, which are a race of beastmen from Doma.
Mm-hmm.
These people have not heard that Kian lives, and you have to basically confront Commander Hayato in order to be able to convince him to stand down in the last solo instance of the encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Which you and Alphino basically take on a horde of Lupin samurai in order to get him to calm down.
Yeah, which is there. To which then we begin the full assault on Alamigo, where the thaumaturges of Ul'dah begin raining fire and ice on the front gate to freeze and burn it until it bursts open.
Meanwhile, the Heavensward Knights and the gunners of Limsa Lominsa are raining cannon fire.
Yes.
Down on the gate as well. And the entire fight is actually being demonstrated by Pippin Steelheart himself, not his father Raubon. Who
Raubon bestowed Tisola, one of the two swords that Raubon uses, to his son.
Yes, which makes him probably the most lawful good Lalafell in existence.
Yes, and as the assault begins, flying war mechs come raining down and causing a whole bunch of trouble.
Only for Lord Hien and several of our friends from Doma to come in and counter-attack, enabling us to breach the gates.
In which begins the final dungeon of Alamigo.
Which is pretty fun in and of itself. It's mostly going through different running up to different gate areas, clearing out the enemies, and then waiting for a Doman ally or an alliance member to blast open the gate to let you proceed.
The first boss is actually a Final Fantasy VII reference in the Mech Scorpion.
And then the second one is
Herr Doctor.
Herr Doctor himself, who literally makes you have an out-of-body experience.
He literally extracts your soul.
And you have to run back to your body before your soul dies for good.
Yes.
Allegedly. But you managed to make it back, defy all his expectations, and knock him out before he can finish his research.
Yes. To which you then run through various elemental bearers, and I was also leading Leo through this fight, and I died on the way.
Because you forgot to proc an Invuln, which made me panic. I ran away trying to bring the Horde, which was now coming from my juicy red mage ass, and I died in a corner because I was on low health. And so the healer clutched it, brought you back, managed to fend that full pull with just 3 members of the party, and then she came over and healed my ass up.
Yeah.
Which was quite fun.
We then get to the main throne room,
which is Xenos proper.
Yes.
So you have a full unmitigated brash with Xenos, in which his signature attack is basically laying out all 3 of his swords charged with ether and doing a massive triple attack with them. Which will kill you unless you manage to destroy the swords before he charges up his ether.
Yeah.
However, this is not the end. This is the appetizer, and he says, "Okay, I'm done with this. We're gonna go finish this in the back," and then has a bunch of guards chase up with the rest of the Scions and all the named heroes of the day. So you have to go chase on Xenos separately, in which he leads you into the Royal Menagerie.
The Royal Menagerie, the garden in the back of the palace, in which, oh look, there's Shinryu, trapped in an Omega cage.
In which Xenos goes ahead, sword in hand, cannot resist monologuing his little battle boner off, as he tells you why he has chosen you. Why it has to be with you that he gets off finally, after so many years of not being able to feel anything, he finally feels that he can fight to the fullest.
He finally feels the sparks.
And he asks you if you will be his battle fuck buddy.
To which you can choose to either accept him or deny him.
And if you deny him, he says, but by denying me, you admit that you must still fight me.
Yes.
And in which case, it's a heads I wins, tails you lose. Motherfucker, no, it's not.
Oh no, it is.
And in which case, he does give us one very interesting note in regards to
the Echo.
The Echo, because he has experimented on himself with the resonance, or the resonant, by giving himself the same treatment because both of his eyes turn black and red.
Into which he cuts open the barrier holding Shinryu.
And attempts to dominate it through sheer battle boner alone.
Yes. Which he does. Successfully.
And he becomes Xeno Shinryu.
Yes.
Now, this leads to the final trial.
The Royal Menagerie.
In which a Xeno Shinryu basically battles you on a platform of the Royal Menagerie before saying, fuck this, we're going to go higher, and knocks your ass into orbit.
Yes.
Which you have to do a active time event in order to jump and grab his spikes and hold on all the way up to the new heavenly pillar.
Which is pretty cool, and the music is awesome.
And also we'll have
breakable platforms.
Breakable platforms, which you fell in.
Yes, I did, because I was focusing on the head. I did not see the tail coming, and oops, there I fell.
Yep. So,
yeah, unfortunately, I will tell you right now, I do not get that trial very often, so sometimes I forget where the tail hits.
It was still fun, though, but that is exactly the point of, I am fine when it's more complicated than it looks.
Yeah.
I find the pattern very quickly. But yeah, no, that encounter was very fun, very fantastic, which leads us to the end of Stormblood, and I think this is the one where I had the most volatile reactions to the entirety of what happened.
Oh, where everyone starts marching.
No. Let's start at the beginning.
Oh wait, well, first off, we need to talk about what Xenos does after you kick his ass.
So we kick Xeno's ass. He falls back down to Earth, landing in the fucking flowers. Fitting. We just teleport back in, and he's like, "Oh, how I've lived, how I've ejaculated my battle boner." And everyone else rushes in afterwards, and Xenos is still standing somehow. And he goes on one more battle monologue,
saying how nothing past this matters. Everything beyond this point would be dull and lifeless and miserable. So I am going to end it here while I am still in post-nut clarity, and takes the sword to his neck
and cuts himself off.
Yes.
Well, he technically cuts through because T-rated the game, but his head would be flying if this was M.
Yes.
Leash tries to rush in and stop him, but she is sadly too late. And so
Xenos drops dead.
Xenos drops dead, sword in hand, blood spilt on the flowers.
Saying, "Thank you, my friend.
My only friend. And
my enemy."
And then Offset, which is... yeah, that's going to get explored in the next expansion.
Oh yeah, because you know he's not dead.
Well, I know he's not dead, but let's wait for that trip. Let's come to that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah.
What's more interesting is how it ends, because everyone's like, as anticlimactic it is, we won.
Yes.
And so what ends up happening is what I can only describe as a New Hope, basically... Final Fantasy XIV's end on the New Hope ending of Star Wars, in which everyone basically lines up, and Ys and the main party are all walking out to go greet the people of Alamigo from the top of the castle,
singing
with the true national anthem in the background, because we heard it initially early into the expansion, but it was the Garlean lyrics, which have very imperialistic and fascist overtones to them.
Yeah.
And this one is the true freedom, good-loving version. And we were saying throughout the entirety, yeah, this is cheesy as fuck. This is cheesy as fuck.
And then Arvold pulls up the flag
of Al Amigo, and I just start dying. Like, I'm sorry. I know this is supposed to be cheesy as fuck, but Arvold pulling an Iwo Jima as we're about to fade to black just sold it for me. I'm sorry. We're done here. No more. This is the perfect ending. Roll credits. We're done.
Pretty
much.
much.
And so we let the credits roll for a bit, and then we have 3 after credit sequences.
Yes.
The first involving the Emperor, who's like, and nothing of value was lost.
Yes, my son was a crazed monster. I don't care what happens. While Elidibus is behind him saying, there's something we can still do.
And the Emperor is like, what could you possibly convince me that anything after this point should matter?
He takes off his mask.
And the Emperor is flabbergasted.
He says, how dare you?
To which either Elidibus has Xenos' face, or Elidibus is somehow a fractal of Xeno, in the same way that the head warrior of Dark is supposed to be our fractal, even though he does not look like a big fucking Hrothgar.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have been funnier if I know this is too complicated, is his name Arnvald or something like that? The head warrior of Dark?
He calls himself Ardbert.
Ardbert.
It's Ardbert on the Earth, but his real name is Ardbert.
Okay. Ardbert. If Ardbert had somehow always been changed to be like basically just a duplicate of your Warrior of Light, fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But that's what my theory is that Elidibus looks like Xenos, or is a fractal of Xenos from the source.
No, he's not.
Okay,
I'm going to tell you right now, the Asians, Elidibus, La Habrea, and you know him, Emmett Selk,
yes,
are known as Paragons. They are the original Asians.
Okay.
They are not sundered at all.
Okay.
They are whole beings.
Okay. For whatever that means. I don't know what whole beings means, but whatever the fuck that means.
Yes.
So that's end credit sequence number 1. Actually, there's 4, but we'll continue in order. Number 2 is Sid, because if you explore around Al Amigo,
there's a giant-ass crater.
I'm sorry, Garalbania, because Al Amigo is the name of the city, but Garalbania. If you go around to Garalbania, you'll find a giant fuck-off hole that just seems to go down bottomlessly. And Sid and the Ironworks over there and like, yep, that's where Omega fell.
Yep.
And so Jesse's overlooking Sid and like, let me guess, you want me to go ahead and sink millions of gil into your next little pet project?
And he's like, yeah, he said, and then she's like, fine, but we're getting someone else to help with this.
And thunder cracks in the background and Sid's like,
you didn't.
And
in walks Nero,
the sassiest motherfucker to put on an Ironworks uniform. Literally says, "I am the new employee of Garland Ironworks. I hope you treat me well."
Yes. And here we begin the Sid and Nero
couples therapy session. Yes.
And then the third thing that happens is that we get a scene of an island out in the middle of nowhere,
in which a giant swordsman is fishing with his katana sheath and is muttering about being hungry again. Gosetsu lives,
and so does Yotsuyu.
For some reason. I don't think Gosetsu, as much as he hated being shot at, his sense of Bushido would not allow him to just leave her for dead.
Yes. And now the question is, what's going to happen with Yotsuyu?
Yes, well, we kind of hinted at it because I mentioned that she shows up later at some point, but we'll get to that quest marker when we get to it.
But yeah, that is pretty much all of Stormblood.
So, my thoughts on Stormblood is definitely not what everyone, at least what the public discourse about it is to me.
Okay, I'm going to say this right now. Is it better or worse than Heaven's Ward?
So, and this is, you remember my exact words when we cleared the Royal Menagerie. It ends better than Heaven's Ward, end of patch, or end of expansion. I still think that Heaven's Ward is the better story.
That's
better expansion as a whole, but Stormblood ends better. I've told you before, the patch quests for
Heaven's
Ward definitely is the true end to Heaven's Ward. Not the as much fun as the encounter with Thornton was. That is not really as satisfying because we know Estinian still has his issues with Nidhogg out there.
Yeah.
And really, the Nidhogg fight with the new music, holy shit, that is the real end of Heaven's Ward. And you really feel it by the end of that. Because I felt like I needed a cigarette after that fight.
Yeah, and I don't blame you.
Meanwhile, as cheesy as the ending to Stormblood was, it definitely felt like a satisfactory conclusion. Also, we left 2 parts out of the ending. One, Estinian goes back and gets the Eyes of Nidhogg. Because we all forgot that Sloppy used the Eyes of Nidhogg to transform himself into Shinryu to begin with.
And Estinian basically says, oh good, you're out of ether. Getting rid of you will be so much easier now.
And basically stabs the eyes to get rid of them.
Yeah, which I think also infuses his weapon with even more of Nidhogg's ability, which is why that weapon is now called Nidhogg.
The other thing that we get is and it's considered part of Stormblood, because the quest doesn't end until you do this bit, is you have a final talk with Lise, who basically gathers the Scions and says, look, I've been put in charge of the resistance here.
I can't be a Scion.
Now we have to rebuild, and that's going to take way more time from me. I can't be a Scion during this time. And everyone's like, girl, we know you need to build your hometown. You do you. We'll be here to support you.
Yeah, we're the Scions. We'll support whatever is needed for anyone, anywhere.
And Y'shtola, in her only contribution to Stormblood, aside from getting murked, is she jokes about, did you think we were going to forget you? And basically cheers up Yida to make sure that she knows she can go ahead and focus on Gur Albania.
Some of us are still recovering here.
Mm-hmm. But no, I see what a lot of people say. I think that they could have reasonably expand. I definitely feel like there is more that could have been done in both countries to make it last more. And then the post-content could have been more dedicated to Doma.
Yeah.
I do think that it's fine as is. It could obviously be better because we listed definitely a bunch of possible story changes or improvements. But it is not the worst thing in the world that I've heard.
Is it still better than A Realm Reborn?
Oh, absolutely. For sure. It was way easier for me to get through this than it was to get through ARR.
I figured. That seems to be the consensus. Stormblood is the middle child between Heaven's Ward and Shadowbringers.
But it's not the black sheep that ARR is. So
yeah.
I'm not too upset. I think that there's a lot. I'm pretty sure because of the fact that I'm playing this all at once and I'm not waiting for patches to drop, that I'm not in a content drought, that people are more upset with Stormblood than they actually should be.
Funny enough, people said that the post-game content for Stormblood was the best it ever was.
Well, we started getting a lot of more fun stuff because in preparation, is there anything you want to go over your thoughts on Stormblood before we go into like what's going to come next?
I guess I should give my thoughts on Stormblood too, since you've been taking over most of this podcast.
Come back and fill in.
All right, so for the most part, I agree that it is not the best expansion compared to Heaven's Ward and Shadowbringers. It is sadly the middle child of the expansions. It is still better than A Realm Reborn, I will say that. But I never felt the hate and vitriol that everyone else seemed to have for this expansion.
I think it must, my opinion, I think it must be an MMO thing to where if you've played a lot of MMOs, that kind of thing has been done even worse than what Stormblood was. And that leaves a knee-jerk reaction that people think is bad, when I think in reality it's probably serviceable to someone who just wants to enjoy the story and the mechanics.
Yeah, I think I did come into Stormblood with a little bit of hesitation because I had followed YouTubers KZ Excellent and Chris Wolfhart, formerly known as Mr. Feel, and they detest Lise and Fordola.
I can see that, but I also think that because of their ilk, who they associate with, and I'm referring mainly to the Gigaboots cast with that, I feel like that's sort of the situation. Yeast very much is a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, half-glass full type character, even when faced with the horrors of war that go on in Geralbania and Doma. Fordola is very much the opposite side of that coin, where she basically lived through all that and did not as much as Yotsuyu, but still basically did whatever she had to survive. Which, again, on running theme with this expansion. Mm-hmm. The horrors of war and what people have to do to survive in it.
Yes. Yeah, so I will say that did color my perception for a while. It wasn't until I started following the Grinding Gear group of Garrett and Kyle, as they were going through Final Fantasy, that they went through through Stormblood, and they had fun with it.
Yeah.
They were talking about how amazing it was, how they loved Lise, how they liked Fordola, and I was like, what are they getting that I'm not? And I watched their long form videos on each section of the expansion, and I was like, oh, I kind of get it now. And that shifted my perception.
And what was the thing that made you change your perception? Like, what exactly was the difference in viewing Fordola and Lisa's characters?
I don't know. I can't quite put a pin on it. I think it was just their attitude towards Lise and Fordola.
I think that has to do, again, with just acknowledging the fact that, yes, Lise was not there, but that she's still coming to it and believing that there can be freedom and goodness. And the same thing with Fordola being the reverse of that. I think the acceptance of both of them as who they are rather than what they should be. And, like, no one should be expecting Lise to come in and understand, oh, everyone's pissed off because they've been under rule for years. And I think at the same time, for Fordola, no one should be like, oh, she should be redeemed, like, or she should understand that things are changing. She should be willing to jump ship.
Right.
I think that is the counterpoint, and what a lot of people think, like, the obvious thing to do would be X, when that's not how it works.
Yeah, and I will say this. I think it's the fact that they realized that this is a story about war. That war is not pretty, it is not simple, it is not neat, clean, or orderly. It is messy. It is rough.
Even in ARR, like, because we are still dealing with people who remember the meteor, the 13th calamity.
Not the 13th, the 7th.
The 7th Umbral calamity, and they are still dealing with that aftermath, even as ARR ends.
Hell, the current event that's going on, the Rising, is literally to memorialize people that died in the calamity.
Right. So the fact that I think that Final Fantasy XIV started out with that and still carried that theme going into Stormblood, and I think those parallels calling back. Now, I do think a lot of people do have some right complaints in that the Alamegan conflict was built up since the beginning.
Yes.
And I think that
it got pushed off to the side for Doma's stuff and only came back in the end.
Right, and I think that is what people... I think that's a very fair criticism, because remember, we've had this build-up, especially because I started in Ul'dah. And so everyone kept talking, we have to deal with these Alamegans because they keep coming in and causing trouble. And we have the Alamegans in Little Alamigo who are on the border of going to fanaticism and all the trials with the Griffin. And so, to me, that makes a lot of sense. It's just in terms of, like, if you're coming fresh from ARR, or remembering how pivotal it was at the start, and expecting it to be this masterful thing, and having it be basically half a cake because of the Doma shit, I could see why that would be frustrating to some people.
To me, it feels more like we got two cakes of different flavors.
Yes, and I think that's the problem, is that for people who take the two cakes separately, because when you try to eat both cakes as a whole, it has a weird mingling taste. If you like that mingling taste, it's fine, because I do. I think that the parallels between Doma and Geralbania are fine, but if you don't like the taste, if you wanted pure Geralbania cake, you're pissed because you have to share it with this Doma.
Yeah.
And while you do like Doma too, it's like, why are you putting Doma in my Geralbania? I think that's where a lot of the frustration came from.
Yeah. People are either wanting one or the other, not both at the same time.
Right, because that was the idea promise behind, we're going to go liberate Geralbania. I think that's where sort of the complaints came in.
Yeah. And Yeah, I can kind of agree with you there. As for the rest of Stormblood, I definitely enjoyed the Doma part. That was a lot of fun, and of course, it just appeals to my inner weeb.
We're weebs, you know. We love anything Japanese and Oriental coded.
Yeah.
And going into the patch quest, I understand we're going to get a lot of meme content going forward.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of content we're going to have to talk about.
Well, not just regular content, but meme content.
Yes. Because, for starters, we've got the next round of Hildebrands to go through.
We got Hildebrands to go through. We have the Four Lords quest, Four Lords trials, which I may try and learn Extreme Byakko, depending on if I want to go for that weapon.
Oh, you can also just buy it off the market board.
I mean, I can, but I want to earn it.
You will have to craft it.
I know. And that's going to be a pain, but we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
We have the Four Lords quest line.
We have the
Omega Raids.
The Omega Raids, and we have the Return to Ivalice Alliance Raids.
That's going to be fun because I don't know how much tactics history you have.
I have a bit more. I've never actually played the original Tactics.
Okay.
I've just done a lot of wiki diving.
Okay, the original Tactics was fucking nuts because that one was incredibly politics heavy. They basically recreated the War of the Roses in Ivalice. And then there's a whole bunch of other things in terms of your own character's plotline. But already the world is kind of fucked because of the way that they start out just with its political nonsense.
I'm going to say this right now. They basically retroactively said that Ivalice is in the world of Hydaelyn.
Okay.
They basically retroactively said what the events of the original Final Fantasy Tactics took place in the world of Final Fantasy XIV.
Okay.
That's one thing that they have kind of lore-wise inserted themselves into.
Gotcha.
So basically, what you're dealing with is a couple of characters that look like characters from the original Tactics. There is actually a guy named Ramza in this, and he is a fucking racist dick.
I mean...
Because he's a Garlean.
I mean, would not be surprised.
Yeah. There's even a Moogle, two Moogles named Montblanc and Hurdy-Gurdy.
Ah, yes, Montblanc and Hurdy.
Yeah.
Those are
they do not look like Ivalice Moogles, sadly.
They are, and just to be clear, those are actually Tactics Advance characters.
Yeah.
So the Tactics Advance world, which is made up.
Yes.
I need to stress that both Tactics Advance and Tactics Advance 2 are literal storybook worlds.
Yes.
They all take place in Ivalice, which somehow is going to materialize in the actual Ivalice, which is now materializing within Eorzea.
Yes.
Final Fantasy XIV is fucking weird, man.
Yeah. And also we get Fran.
And Yoshi P is a man of culture once again. But before you distracted me with Cheesecake, I was actually going to say, but that is not even the wildest crossover that we're going to have in this patch.
Oh yeah, we got the Monster Hunter crossover.
So, fans of Rei'tan know that you are also a Monster Hunter fan.
Yes, I am a Monster Hunter fan. But I technically got started in 4U with my friends, the Khonshu Commandos.
However, there is one encounter you have never done you have attempted, but have never completed.
Yes, in Monster Hunter World, they did the Final Fantasy XIV crossover of the Behemoth.
And so, that is legendarily difficult in the Monster Hunter community.
It is legendary difficult, and there's also an extreme version.
Who is even more so difficult, as NHR Productions has given a tutorial detailing the breakdowns of not just the Behemoth fight, but the differences between normal and extreme.
Yes.
That was a crossover event for Monster Hunter in which FF14 gave them a Behemoth to play with. This is Monster Hunter returning the favor by giving us a Rathalos.
Yes, which there is a normal and an extreme version, and you can even cut off the tail and carve scales off the head and the tail, and you exchange those scales for glam.
I cannot tell you how weird it was to go up to the hunter, start the quest with him, and then to have the fucking quest accepted display from Monster Hunter show up on the screen in the middle of Final Fantasy XIV.
when you go to the Azim Steppe, you find a Palico, and I love the response you can make as a Hrothgar.
What is the response that you can make as a Hrothgar?
When you see the Palico talking to you, you go, a talking cat? And I'm like, why would I say this? I'm a fucking Hrothgar!
I imagine the Makote would also be equally conflicted with that response.
Yes. I'm surprised that there wasn't a text option that was retroactively added in for both Mikote and Hrothgar to say, well, look who's talking.
Right.
I chose that option, and I'm disappointed that it did not give me a rebuttal.
Yes, I would be sad about that, too. I think the only other thing...
Oh, by the way, you can also get the Rathlos mount by doing the extreme and getting plus scales and exchanging like 100 of them.
Joy. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else that we can do in patch quests, because mostly what I'll be doing on my free time is grinding up my other jobs. As I said before, I want to go into Shadowbringer's Dark Knight.
Yes. So you're going to need to get that to 70, which thankfully it won't be too much of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say for this first patch, for this first section, we're going to get you through patches 4.1 to 4.3. That is the end of Stormblood.
Yes, and then probably, I would say, picking 2 or 3 of the quest lines, it would probably be either 4 Gods and maybe the Evil East raids.
Okay, you want to do 4 Gods and Evil East? That's...
I would say, because I would feel more... I'm trying to think, because let me ask you this: how depressing are the patch quests going into Shadowbringer?
They aren't.
Basically, I don't want to be bouncing around from leading introduction into morbidity. At the same time, I'm doing shenanigans.
Okay, then you'll probably want to do Hildebrand first.
Okay, so then let's do Hildebrand and Ivalice.
Okay, you want to do Hildebrand and Ivalice. That works. And then for the second half, you can do Omega.
Omega and the 4 Gods.
4 Gods, yeah.
That sounds like a plan.
All right.
And then, of course, I still need to go ahead and do a little bit more frontline, just so that I can get a little bit better, or Crystalline Conflict, just to get a better handle on how that works.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, before you start doing the Hildebrand questline, I'm going to ask you to do the optional level 70 dungeon, Kugane Castle.
Okay.
That is in Kugane.
Okay. I will need to... we'll find which one gives the job, and we'll do Kugane Castle.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's the only thing that needs to be done prior. Basically, at this point, I'm probably just going to go ahead and grind up my classes up to the requisite levels, because I think Shadowbringers is when they start doing role quests, correct?
That is when they start doing role quests, and for Shadowbringers, the role quests, you need to do one of them completely before the end. Okay. It is mandatory, because you will be locked out until you get the item at the end of the role quest.
Okay, so I probably will just do the tank role quest, but because I do have a full gambit, I can probably also do a DPS role quest and a healer role quest.
Yes, you have a tank, a healer, a physical DPS, which also counts as ranged as well, and a magical DPS.
Yeah, and then later on in Endwalker, then it separates into physical, melee, physical, ranged, magical.
Yes.
Okay.
And it also does that for Dawn Trail as well.
I have so many society quests that I have to go do now.
Yeah, society quest.
Oh yes, did we mention that in the last episode that they rechanged Beast Tribes to society?
Oh no, they didn't. But they were called. I think they were just.
They were called Beast Quest before.
Yeah.
And then they called Beast Man Quest. And now they are society quests.
Yes.
Because we live in a society.
Yes. Which is weird, but I guess it makes sense because technically in Dawn Trail, not in Dawn Trail, in Shadowbringers, one of the tribe quests was the dwarves.
I can see that.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to call them a beast tribe when technically the dwarves are Lalafels.
Right, and then also you have the entire female-only race of the Ananta.
Yes.
As well as I'm pretty sure the, what's it called? I forget what they call the beast people that support Ifrit.
Oh, the Amalja.
The Amalja are also, like, very much male-coded. I don't know if it's just a model limitation or whether it's like, no, it's only males.
I think it's just a model limitation, because I haven't seen female Amalja as far as I can tell.
As far as we can tell, that's the cue for the Rule 34 writers to get to work.
Yeah, let's see. Any other all-female or all-male races? I'm trying to think. The Vanu Vanu aren't there.
No, Vanu have both. The Mughals have both.
Yeah.
I think it's only just them. Yeah.
You can't really tell with the Vath because they're fucking insects.
I think the Vath are just non-binary.
Non-binary or just
because remember they're all of another mind, so it's functionally
they're all drones basically.
Yeah, but functionally they're functionally they'd be non-binary in my argument.
All right.
I think that covers it. Just basically just lots of other shit to do.
Yeah.
This one probably won't take as long because it's only a little less of a jump, and I will be delaying any massive guild grind for crafting until probably the later patch area.
Yeah. What we've been doing is we've been trying to schedule at least one day a week to kind of just hang out and play 14 together.
Right.
Sometimes more, sometimes less. It just all depends on the schedule.
Right. And also, I was going through, at least during the last couple of episodes, I was going through a difficult work situation. I've since changed jobs, so that should go ahead and make it a little bit easier for me to get some 14 in.
Yeah, that should be doing. So maybe it'll be more. Hopefully, it'll be less than 2 months.
We'll get one more episode in before the end of the year. I can promise you that. Probably starting Shadowbringers before the end of the year.
Yeah,
that's probably what's going to end up happening is Shadowbringers by the end of the year, and then going into 2025, Shadowbringers, Endwalker, possibly Dawntrail.
Possibly, but I think we need to just focus on one at a time first.
Yeah, I think it's doable through expansions in a year. I think that'll be enough to catch me up just in time to go ahead and get ready for the next one.
I mean, thankfully, it's 2 years between expansions.
So perfect. I am right at the right time, although technically I started when Endwalker was still fresh, but that was also because I didn't have a proper rig, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, hopefully that'll be better.
But yes, this is the end of our Stormblood review. This is Leo Force.
This is Ray, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Later, guys, and have a good day.
Ciao.